If you leave it in there as an alternative, it's a little bit like Mount Egmont and Taranaki.
Right. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose an interesting, another observation is that whenever you see the haka, that is unequivocally New Zealand. And I suppose if we had a name that was unequivocally, identifying.
Te whakarongo mai koe ki te reo irirangi o Aotearoa. This is Checkpoint on RNZ National. I'm Lisa Owen. Hauraki nei, $1.9 billion was pledged for mental health, yet a patient's forced to sleep on a mattress on the floor of an acute unit. So where is the money gone and who is checking? Wairoa police call in reinforcements in the face of growing gang violence and gun crime. Meanwhile, the police watchdog considers reopening its inquiry into a fatal shooting by an officer. Rider beware, Dunedin's unregulated ride-sharing prompts an alert. Is $20,000 enough to plug a massive leak in the Ruapehu District Council's water? Fiji's racing to get its people vaccinated as it grapples with a wave of COVID cases. And Ferdy the bull, world famous in Taranaki, hangs up his horns.
RNZ News at 5. Kia ora, ko Susana Leata with the NA. The Health Minister's flagging a review of the rollout of the record $1.9 billion investment in mental health, citing concerns it's not happening quickly enough. The money was allocated in 2019, but 2 years on, it's unclear how much progress has been made on building new mental health rooms and facilities. The Minister, Andrew Little, says he's concerned enough to be considering an official review.
Look, I haven't got that far. I just expressed my view that things seem to take a long time. There are people who are suffering. We're nearly halfway through the program, and I think it's appropriate to do a stock take to check that things are achieving what we wanted to achieve.
The most recent figures show just over $500,000 of the $235 million tagged for capital has been spent. Māori Party co-leader Rawari Waititi is urging the Independent Police Conduct Authority to reopen its inquiry into the fatal police shooting of a Rotorua man. 35-year-old Shargin Stephens was shot after attacking a police car with a weed slasher. An RNZ investigation reveals multiple contradictions between the IPCA report and findings from the police investigation into the 2016 death. Mr Waititi says Mr Stephens was under close watch, with 64 police bail checks in the weeks leading up to the shooting.
Consistently being harassed, I would say. I think the IPCA needs to really look at, reevaluate its position, because even the police officers are saying that there are huge discrepancies in their findings.
The IPCA says the decision on whether it will reopen its investigation will be made next week. Wairoa's mayor says having police on duty 24/7 is a relief for the community after recent gang-related shootings. Operation Atlas was launched by police late last week in a response to escalating tensions between the mongrel mob and Black Power, including when a house was shot at while 2 children slept inside. Craig Little says more police are being brought in to deal with the escalating violence.
I think it's the 24/7 policing through the night, which will be the big one for us. It was happening, but I believe on a random basis. But yeah, it's happening now, so that's a good thing, and maybe they need to look at that in the future. That might have to happen all the time.
Since the beginning of June, homes have been shot at in the wider Wairoa area 5 times. At least 1 person has been injured. The government's being told that its efforts to save the Hauraki Gulf don't go far enough. Details of a new package to protect fishing stocks and wildlife have been unveiled today. Kate Gregan has more.
Hauraki groups have been poring over the details of the plan unveiled at dawn in Tamaki Makaurau. The amount of the Gulf under protection will increase almost 3 times what it is now to nearly 18% of the total area. The consensus is that the changes don't go nearly far enough. The co-chair of the Hauraki Gulf Forum, Nicola MacDonald, says they're the most positive changes for the area in a generation. But she says there should be no dredging or trawling in the Gulf because of the impact on the marine habitat. The new plan severely restricts the practice but doesn't end it.
A $200,000 mayoral relief fund has been set up to support people experiencing hardship after the tornado tornado that tore through the South Auckland suburb of Papatoetoe at the weekend. The Auckland Council and the government have each allocated $100,000 to the fund, which is also accepting contributions from the public. Mayor Phil Goff says more than 1,200 properties were damaged and 79 homes have been assessed as either uninhabitable or unsafe to enter. Around 67 people need emergency accommodation. Applications to the Mayoral Relief Fund can be made online or by calling the Auckland Council. It's 4 minutes past 5. Play is finally likely to resume on the 5th day of the World Test Cricket Championship final between New Zealand and India in Southampton tonight. 2 days have now been completely washed out, and with 2 days to play, New Zealand will resume on 101 for 2 in reply to India's first innings of 217. The weather forecast is good for the next 2 days, and batting coach Luke Ronchi says the plan is to bat the entire day.
I don't expect teams to go out and be scoring 200 runs a session. It might take you all day to score 250, but if we can bat the whole day and do something like that, that gives us a bit of a lead and it gives us an up in the game. And then from the Indian point, they're going to come out and try and take wickets on a surface that has been good for bowling.
Dame Valerie Adams' gold medal hopes at the Tokyo Olympics have improved, with defending champion American Michelle Carter withdrawing from the Games. Carter, who pipped Adams for gold at the Rio Olympics 4 years ago, has had surgery to remove a benign tumour from her right ankle. Adams, a two-time Olympic champion, having won in 2008 and 2012, will be competing in her 5th Olympics in Tokyo next month. Denmark has pulled off an emphatic 4-1 win over Russia in Copenhagen to qualify for the knockout stages of Euro 2020, while Belgium beat Finland 2-0. Having lost their opening 2 games in the wake of Christian Eriksen's heart attack in the opener against Finland, Denmark went through as runners-up. Belgium's win also guarantees England's place in the last 16. That's the news.
Contradictions over a police shooting report.
The IPCA report also said bail checks were justified because Stephens was uncooperative. This is completely contradicted by the sworn statements from the police officers.
The former Australian Deputy Prime Minister and former New Zealander is back.
There was a spill motion put forward. Spill motion was carried. We had an election and Barnaby Joyce has been elected leader of the National Party at a federal level.
And are UFOs out there?
The UFO community has been seeking a disclosure for 50 plus years or more. I think this is a good step forward.
Chasing the Truth. Morning Report, weekdays from 6 on RNZ National.
Now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight tomorrow. Northland to Taumaranui, also Coromandel, Bay of Plenty and Taupo, fine weather. Taranaki to Horowhenua, Kapiti Coast, including Taihape, partly cloudy, isolated showers clearing tomorrow. Gisborne to Wairarapa, also Wellington, a few showers clearing tomorrow. Marlborough, excluding Kaikoura Coast, and the west from Nelson to Fiordland, mostly fine. Cloud and showers about and south of Bulla from tomorrow afternoon. Canterbury and Kaikoura Coast, cloudy periods, a few showers about the plains and Kaikoura Coast, clearing tomorrow. Fine inland, but low cloud at times about the Mackenzie Basin. Central Otago and Southern Lakes, fine apart from areas of low cloud or fog. North Otago or Southland, cloudy periods and a few showers, clearing to fine weather tomorrow morning. High cloud from tomorrow afternoon. Chatham Island, showers clearing tomorrow morning. RNZ National at 7 minutes past 5.
Thanks, Susanna. Tēnā koutou katoa, no mai haere mai ki Checkpoint I tēnei rā. Ko Lisa Owen tēnei. The Health Minister is frustrated the government's huge spend on mental health isn't trickling through to services on the front line. Last night, Checkpoint brought you the story of Kiana, who was forced to sleep on a mattress on the floor of a lounge in an acute mental health unit at Taranaki Hospital because all the beds were full. She says the experience left her feeling dehumanised and unworthy of proper help. In the 2019 budget, the government set aside $1.9 billion for mental health, about $235 million of that for mental health facilities and infrastructure. I asked Health Minister Andrew Little if it's acceptable to have an acutely unwell person sleeping on the floor of a mental health unit.
Never acceptable.
Then why is it still happening?
We have a lot of mental health facilities that are pretty run down.
And that's why we made the commitment in 2019 with the mental health package that we put together, that 5 of the facilities, actually 4 of them would be completely rebuilt, another would have a substantial upgrade. So that work is now underway.
So how many extra acute beds do you have now as a result of that $1.9 billion that you pledged in 2019?
Well, since none of those projects have started, and in fact they haven't even completed their design phase, I don't know, but we don't have any because that work is still being done, and I won't know until the design phase is fully complete.
Is it moving fast enough, Minister?
I would like it to move a lot faster, but this is the nature of health capital projects and possibly public capital projects. I mean, the one mental health facility that the previous government did build in their time in government opened in September last year, and approval for that was given in 2015. So that's 5 years. The projects, 4 of the 5 projects that we've approved and backed financially are due to commence construction next year, and I expect will be completed either late next year or early 2023.
But you can appreciate that doesn't help when you've got patients lying on mattresses on the floor of acute units feeling dehumanised and unworthy of proper treatment because of where they are staying.
Exactly, and that is totally unacceptable, and we know that there are pressure on acute mental health units, but that's why the overall package we're trying to get to is, at least for some people, much earlier intervention at the mild to moderate mental health stage that can actually prevent many going on to the need for acute services is so critical. So we actually take, in the longer term, take the pressure off those acute facilities. We will always need acute facilities. There will always be people whose mental unwellness is so severe that they do need that level of help. And so it is unacceptable that somebody who is in an acute mental health facility in a state of crisis has that level of care provided to them, even if it is only for a few hours, but it is still unacceptable.
How much of the $1.9 billion has been spent?
Well, we were due to spend about $350 million by next week, 30th of June. About $290 million of that has been spent. Actually, a lot more has been committed because the commitments go through to years 3 and 4 of the 4-year spending program. So a total of about $748 million has been committed in total. But there is more to do. I know there's some talk about when it comes to these rebuilds and upgrades that only $500,000 has been spent. Actually, that is not correct. It's the way that DHBs account for the spending on their capital projects. They don't get reimbursed until further down the track. So in terms of the $235 million allocated for the mental health rebuilds and upgrades, I think roughly about $9 million has been spent so far in the design, the architects planning, getting consents phase, and then construction starts next year.
Okay, so maybe a better measure is what's been completed. So is there a single project funded out of this that is complete?
Well, there are a number, but this is a 4 to 5 year project. So things like greater access and choice, and that's the frontline primary health care services that deal with the mild to moderate mental health issues. We've added, I think, about 520 odd full-time equivalent positions in various GP and community practices around the country. We're probably roughly halfway through that program, so we've got a lot more to add. But that was always the case. But if you look at completed things, we have a permanent mental health and wellbeing commission in place. We have a suicide prevention office in place. We have a long-term pathway, a 10-year horizon for dealing with or planning for mental health services now out for consultation. So those things are sort of
well, let me put it another way, Minister. How satisfied are you with the progress being made and that the money is going to the right places?
From the reports I've had so far, I'm reasonably satisfied. We are a bit behind because that is COVID, but I think it's important that there is a level of independent reassurance, and which is why I'm talking to the Ministry now about just being absolutely sure that what was expected and the objective set out in 2019, that those expectations are being met. We know that,
So are you talking about auditing progress, Minister, in some way?
Just a bit of a stock take is halfway through the expected program. Are we? How close to on track are we? And are we satisfied that what we expected to have been happening by now is happening? So I'm talking to the Ministry about that at the moment.
What's the deadline for them to report back on progress?
Well, I get progress reports periodically already. It's just really about I'm concerned that there seems to be an understanding more broadly, or abroad, that nothing has happened. We get people on public platforms saying nothing is happening, nothing has changed. I mean, I've seen things that are different, and I've spoken to people who have had the benefit of new services, and so I don't accept that nothing has changed. But I think the public are entitled to an assurance that actually what we started out doing in 2019 with a $1.9 billion investment, that good progress is being made. But these things do take time, regrettably as that is. And the people who end up suffering as a consequence, I know, are some of our most vulnerable. And I am deeply concerned about that. And I engage with the DHBs and the Ministry of Health to make sure that everything that can be done to make sure services available right now, A, are available, and B, are at a quality that we would expect.
And that was Andrew Little speaking. We would love your feedback on this one. Homai o whakaaro. Is the mental health spend, while making its way, trickling down into the system fast enough? Have you managed to get the help you need or help for your whānau members? Let us know what your experience is. The Minister there saying it's time for a stock take. You can text us on 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, or you can email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. It's almost 15 minutes past 5 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Still to come on the program, extra police are brought into Wairoa in the wake of growing tensions and ongoing violence. The Independent Police Conduct Authority is considering reopening its inquiry into the police shooting of Rotorua man Shargin Stephens. Mr Stephens was shot and killed after smashing up a police car with a weed slasher. It comes as RNZ has uncovered yet more holes in the IPCA report into the 2016 death of the 35-year-old Māori man, which found police actions were justified. Guyon Espiner has the developments.
Right from the beginning of the IPCA report into the police shooting of Shargin Stephens, the official story falls down. On page 1 of the IPCA report, it says the police officers who responded to the incident were unaware of Mr Stephens' identity until after the shooting. But according to the police's own investigation into the homicide, that is not true. RNZ has discovered that one of the officers, who was given the codename L11, told detectives he knew it was Shargin Stephens the minute he confronted him that day back in July 2016. I recognised him straight away, Officer L11 said. He's a well-known criminal and I have tracked him many times. Tracy McIntosh, a criminologist and Professor of Indigenous Studies at Auckland University, is urging the IPCA to reopen its inquiry.
It does seem very strange that there seems to be elements in the report that are not even backed up by the statements that police have given themselves.
A lot hangs on the credibility of the IPCA report because the coroner has said only a narrow inquest is needed because he accepts the IPCA has already established much of what happened on that day. The Stephens whānau are battling for a full inquest into the death and their lawyers have hired a digital imaging expert to analyse police video footage. The report by Wellington Company Security Risk Management found 7 seconds was missing from police taser camera footage taken right before he was shot. Māori Party co-leader Rawiri Waititi says the missing footage should ring alarm bells.
When a man loses his life, I don't think we should be trusting anything that goes conveniently missing and that would play a pivotal part in any investigation into the death of somebody. So we're not just talking about somebody going for a stroll around the block and have been arrested or tasered. This is somebody who has lost their life.
And today the IPCA told RNZ it had known for some time that footage was missing from police camera footage disclosed to the family. The IPCA said it has the full video and that the missing section doesn't contain extra information that would be relevant to the shooting. The missing footage is not mentioned in the IPCA report at all and only came to light today.
It really does demand a full inquiry, that there is so much in there that needs further investigation and a high level of understanding.
Mr Stephens was on electronically monitored bail at the time. Despite this, police bail checked him 64 times in the 5 weeks leading up to the shooting. 15 times they went to his house between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. Tracy McIntosh said it was difficult to see how this could be justified.
Many may look at this as, a sort of direct attempt to break down someone. And if that was the case, then we need to understand the broader context for that as well.
Also missing from the IPCA report is the fact that the officer who shot Mr Stephens had also bail checked him. The IPCA report said the police bail checks were reasonable because Stephens had been uncooperative and that the late night visits never woke him up anyway. However, in the police investigation, one officer says he woke Stephens up on 6 separate bail checks. And sworn statements from the police who bail checked him say he was compliant every time, even when woken at 2 or 3 in the morning.
Consistently being harassed, I would say. I think the IPCA needs to really look at, reevaluate its position, because even the police officers are saying that there are huge discrepancies in their findings.
National's police spokesman Simeon Brown is also concerned about the discrepancies.
That's something which is quite a serious thing if the police haven't necessarily provided all of the evidence to the IPCA. Their job is to make sure they look at everything, and so that does seem to me to be quite serious.
Police Minister Porthor Williams is distancing herself from calls for the IPCA to reopen its inquiry.
I don't think that's something that I should comment on. We have an independent authority and I'm comfortable with that process.
The IPCA says it now has to examine its files again, and by the middle of next week it will give an update on whether it will reopen its investigation.
It is 20 minutes past 5. Kia mo tono mai. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. Papatoetoe High School parents are voicing mixed views on whether schools should shoulder the load of vaccinating students. Children aged 12 to 15 will soon be able to get the Pfizer vaccine after MedSafe gave the all clear. The government's likely to sign off on the approval later this month. Papatoetoe High Principal Vaughan Quio says it'll take a lot of time and resources to roll out a school vaccine program. Our reporter Nick Trubridge went to the school for bell time to see what parents think.
Not long ago, Papatoetoe High School was a hotspot during one of Auckland's community COVID-19 outbreaks, with a family connected to the school contracting the virus. Huge white tents were set up so students could be tested. But today we return in rosier times. Children as young as 12 may soon be able to get the COVID vaccine. And most parents on this afternoon's school run are certainly happy about it.
Oh yeah, we'll definitely get the whole family done. So me, my wife, my 3 kids, we're definitely going to do it.
Some say they've done their homework and are more than happy for their children to get the jab.
It's safe. It's precautious. If they get vaccinated, we can secure them from these type of viruses in future.
If school to do it, I'm very happy for that.
But dig a little deeper and it becomes apparent there remains some vaccine hesitancy among parents here in Auckland South.
Not sure.
Why is that?
Because some people said the vaccine is not good for kids. That's why I'm not pretty sure.
This parent says he'll certainly be seeing that his kids get the jab, but adds at the end of the day, he believes in freedom of choice.
We all have our own thinking, we all got a brain, so use it. If you want to get it done, you get it done. If you don't want to get it done, you don't get it done.
So what about the role of high schools? Take Papatoetoe. It's already showed it can set up walk-in testing stations. So what about vaccine stations? Most Papatoetoe parents here say yes, please.
Yeah, more efficient rather than we are taking them with us and standing there in queues. It's better to get them vaccinated in schools.
It's better to have it done in the school so it will be easier for the kids as well.
But again, there is some hesitancy. Some say it's parents' personal responsibility to get their kids vaccinated, not the school's job.
Each individual, each family should be held accountable for their own actions. So if the parents want their kids to get it done, they should make arrangements with their family doctor to get it done.
The issue will go to Cabinet soon for final sign-off before we know when and where school kids will get vaccinated.
As Fiji grapples with an escalating COVID crisis, the country is racing to get its population vaccinated. The Pacific nations recorded 126 new cases today, bringing the total active cases to more than 1,500. RNZ Pacific's Christine Ravoy has more.
Fiji's government refuses to enforce a strict nationwide lockdown, saying this would cripple the economy. The government has been ramping up its vaccination program instead. More than 250,000 people have now had at least one dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine to date. The target is to vaccinate 600,000 people, or 60% of the population. Head of the vaccination task force, Dr. Rachel Devi, says the aim is to have everyone receive their first jab by August.
We know that apart from the containment measures that we're doing in the country, vaccination is one key element of it. And especially when we know that it's fortunate that we know that the AstraZeneca vaccine that we have in Fiji works against the Delta variant as well.
Opposition MP Lenora Ngerengere-Tambua says with an escalating daily average case count of over 100, it's evident the government has lost control.
The virus has spread to the west. It's spread to the highlands of Naitasiri. Cases in Nawaka, in Nadi, continue to rise. The fact that our Prime Minister is saying that there is going to be no chance of a lockdown, I think, is rather unwise, because he may have just painted himself into a corner if our cases continue to rise the way they're doing.
Another 50,000 AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccines have arrived in Fiji from Australia's commitment of 1 million doses. A medical assistance team, including New Zealand and Australian specialists, arrived in Nadi on Monday. High Commissioner John Feeks says the health security of its neighbours is a critical priority for both New Zealand and Australia.
I want to be very, very clear about this. They are here to support their Fijian colleagues. They're not leading the response. They're here in an advisory capacity to help the Fijian response.
New Zealand has also pledged 500,000 doses, scheduled to arrive in July. But Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern says this is awaiting MedSafe approval.
We've put $40 million of support from New Zealand into supporting Fiji in the midst and in the wake of COVID-19 and the impact it's having there. And we've also made a commitment around vaccine donations, but we've been in very close contact with Australia to ensure that together we are meeting their vaccine needs as quickly as we can.
Meanwhile, a 48-hour lockdown is in force for a Fijian settlement near the capital, Suva. The restriction on Gawia in Lami came into effect at 4 a.m. today, local time, and will end at 4 a.m. on Thursday. 7 people have died from COVID-19 in Fiji since March 2020, with 5 deaths from this latest outbreak in April.
It is 25 minutes past 5 and this is Checkpoint. Both Labour and National are playing down New Zealand First's chances of returning to Parliament, but won't completely rule out working with the party ever again. Winston Peters used his party's AGM over the weekend to declare a comeback and unleashed a torrent of attacks on all and sundry. Here's our Deputy Political Editor, Craig McCulloch.
Gone from Parliament, but not forgotten, Winston Peters is still causing a stir in the corridors of power.
Look, it's Winston, right? He just said stuff.
It was kind of the voice of insignificance, to be quite honest.
I just get disappointed. I think that Winston is better than that.
That's ridiculous.
The minor outrage provoked by the New Zealand First Leader's speech over the weekend, his first since the party crashed out of Parliament last year.
We are coming back.
Back with a vengeance, Mr Peters heaped scorn on the government and opposition, on so-called cancel culture, on the increased use of te reo and the word Aotearoa. But perhaps his most provocative remarks were reserved for a later interview with News Talk ZB, when explaining why he chose not to go into power with National in 2017.
You look at the sex maniacs and the mess they're in now and tell me, what option do I have?
Yes, you heard right. Sex maniacs. A descriptor which sent Judith Collins' trademark eyebrows skyward.
Well, he obviously doesn't know us.
National's Chris Pink went further. He fired off a colourful joke on Twitter, complete with an asterisk expletive. It said Winston Peters is the real sex maniac because he can F*** K a whole country at once. This morning, the tweet had been deleted.
My office said it's just simply inappropriate. We don't use that sort of language.
Yeah, look, I don't want to cause any offence with the framing of the tweet, so I thought might as well err on the side of safety and take that down.
So the tweet is gone. but not the feeling behind it. National has little love for Mr Peters, no desire to work with him.
We just don't see him coming back, so it's an extraordinary hypothetical, and the party's always ruled him out for years now.
But what if New Zealand First had a different leader?
Oh, we'll wait to see.
Labour is also leaving the door open a crack, though Jacinda Ardern doesn't exactly seem to think it a likely prospect.
As I've said before, those who I've worked with before, I've always kept an open mind on, but it's a massive hypothetical at this point in time.
A massive hypothetical, and one many in Parliament would rather did not eventuate.
I really don't care.
The racist propaganda and rhetoric coming out of a brown mouth doesn't make it any different.
I hope he's enjoying his retirement.
They got a lot of work to do.
Would you like to see them return?
No. But good luck to them.
It's a steep road ahead for New Zealand First, but then the party has come back before.
Kia ora, e te iwi e Hauraki nei I a checkpoint. Wairoa police call in reinforcements with gang tensions and firearms incidents on the rise. Speaking on the marae for women, is it a gender equality issue or a tikanga Māori issue? And the man behind the Taranaki Bulls mascot, Ferdinand, is hanging up his horns. Ho mai o whakaro, we would love your feedback. Nō reira anei nā kaupapa mō te hōtaka nei. So the subject we're talking about this evening, mental health. Is the money trickling down fast enough? The government put $1.9 billion into mental health in the 2019 budget, but are you seeing the results of that? Let us know your experience in the mental health system. You can text us on 2101, you can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, or the email address is checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. It is time now for the headlines with Susanna.
The Health Minister is concerned that the rollout of a record $1.9 billion investment in mental health is not happening fast enough. The money was allocated in 2019, but 2 years on, it's unclear how much progress has been made on building new mental health rooms and facilities. The most recent figures show just over $500,000 of the $235 million tagged for capital spending has been used. Andrew Little is flagging a review of the rollout. The Independent Police Conduct Authority is considering reopening its inquiry into the fatal police shooting of a Rotorua man. 35-year-old Shargin Stephens was shot after attacking a police car with a weed slasher. An RNZ investigation reveals multiple inconsistencies between the IPCA report and findings from the police investigation into the 2016 death. Civil Defence in Gisborne is linking families whose homes have been damaged by the weekend's flooding on East Cape to social agencies who can help them. At least 7 households in Tairawhiti have been forced into temporary or long-term accommodation. The agencies on hand to help them include the Ministry of Social Development, EQC and Te Runanganui or Ngati Porou. 6 rural roads remain closed in the region, including State Highway 35 at Pōtaka near the northern tip of East Cape, which has slip damage. Fiji's Ministry of Health has recorded 180 new cases of COVID-19 and 2 deaths in the past 24 hours. It takes the total number of deaths since the April outbreak began to 7. There are more than 1,600 active cases in isolation. It's hoped the new data on Māori, which includes iwi affiliation, will help to plug gaps in the 2018 census. Extremely low census turnout has left Stats NZ resorting to data from other places to form the Māori data set, which is used to determine issues from funding through to Māori electorates. Those are the latest news headlines on RNZ National. Our next news and weather update is at 6.
Kia ora rā e ho, no mai hoki mai. If you're just joining us, this is Checkpoint, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. Ko taku manuhiri e nai nei ko Nona Peltier to talk all things business. Nona joins me in the studio. Let's kick off with household confidence levels on the rise according to the latest survey. Yeah, so what's it telling us?
It's a strange survey result because it's quite patchy. So overall, households are more confident and are feeling a bit more, confident about spending money. Rise of 1.9 points to 107.1 in June.
Who surveys this one?
This is the Westpac McDermott Miller Consumer Confidence Survey. Interestingly, though, this is a recovery from where we were last year, but we're still below the long-term average. So while confidence has been stronger now, still not where we were pre-COVID. Interestingly, it's quite diverse. So if you live in the Most livable city, Auckland. It's very confident. Same with Canterbury, but not so much. And Wellington being the number one most confident part of the country. Regions less so, and older people more confident. Younger people not very confident at all. The 18 to 29 age group are feeling quite downbeat about their outlook, and I guess that has a lot to do with housing, jobs, and so forth. So in that case, now interesting also, normally we talk about households wanting to buy major appliances. Yep. They're putting that off. Now, it's not because they don't have the funds to do it, but they're a little bit worried about whether or not, if they put the money down, whether that product will ever arrive, given the supply chain constraints. And we've heard of that, where you might want to buy a new product, but it's not in the store. You have to order it. A lot of people are a little bit reluctant.
Yeah, I'm really interested about that, Nona, because in some of those department stores that sell appliances and whatever, a lot of them have stickers that say not in stock or this one is in stock. So, they're selling. I want to know from people if they've tried to buy one of those items. 2101 on the text. Let us know if you've tried to buy something, what it is that hasn't been in stock. Let's see if we can find out.
Yeah,
Nona.
well, I'm imagining it's going to be some long lead times. I spoke with Greg Foran from Air New Zealand last week, and he was saying that he thought air freight was going to continue to increase with consumer expectations. They want those products. They want them now, and they're not happy for a ship that's going to take maybe 6 months these days, if you can even get a ship to bring your container to New Zealand. And so it's a thing. And I guess people are prepared to pay a bit more, or they're not prepared to pay anything at all until they see the
Hold
goods.
Off. Yeah. Okay. So Nelson is having a bit of a boom in commercial property. Now, what's behind that? Because aren't lots of people abandoning offices, work from home?
Well, it's industrial property mostly, and so this is makes sense. Construction, logistics, environmental, aquaculture, which is of course fisheries, that type of thing, agriculture. Big demand. So they opened up a subdivision on a piece of land that used to be a piggery back in the 50s. And then afterwards, it was like small sheds for owner-occupier, small operators, that sort of thing. Anyway, they decided to subdivide it. They got $25 million for these 10 lots. They had 60 buyers bidding for them. And they went like within a month, gone. So there's no more industrial property basically available that's being developed in Nelson. So if you want it, you got to go down the road to Richmond. There's more. They're making more land available for industrial property and so on there. But the broker I spoke to from Colliers said that there was strong demand for office as well, any kind of commercial, and even retail, where we've seen that in a lot of regions, retail is, unless they're the big box stores, Main Street, New Zealand, less so.
That's interesting, up against your consumer confidence thing, which said in the region's not so confident, yet we seem to have a booming situation in Nelson.
Well, that's why I say it's really patchy. Some people are very confident about their outlook, but then another group maybe not. So we're going to learn more about what's going on in the regions. Westpac said they're going to have a report coming out at the end of the month on what's happening in the various regions. And it is patchy, and the regions that are most reliant on international tourists are doing it the hardest, versus those that are booming there with the demand for food, other kinds of products that Kiwis want to buy, as well as international, consumers are still wanting some of our products.
Yeah. Okay, let's take a spin around the markets.
Right. Well,
have you got them with you?
I do. So our dollar took a bit of a dive over the weekend, and that's because the U.S. Federal Reserve was quite hawkish in its outlook for interest rates, and inflation is the thing that's got people worried. So our dollar is trading at 69.8 U.S. cents, and that's lower than we've seen. However, we had another report from Westpac, which is expecting the Kiwi to appreciate over the rest of this year. So it's low now, but is expected still to go higher. 92.8 Australian, which is where it's been for quite a while, and 50.2 British pence. The top 50 index, we rose nearly 0.3% today, and that was a 35-point gain to 12,535. And we've been seesawing there for a while, up, down, up, down. But overall, the markets in Asia were positive today.
Thanks, Nona. Ngā mihi mō te rā. Whānau are being urged to report whoever is behind a spree of gang-related shootings in Wairoa, with police saying a line's been crossed and children put in serious danger. Extra officers have been brought into the district as part of Operation Atlas that's targeting the Black Power and mongrel mob gangs in the wake of growing tensions and ongoing violence. This month alone, there's been 5 incidents where shots have been fired. A Wairoa man turned up at Gisborne Hospital with serious gunshot wounds. And just last week, 2 children were in a Raupanga house when someone fired into it. Tairāwhiti Area Commander Inspector Sam Abrahama says it's been a worrying time for many in the community.
Over recent times, there have been a number of incidents involving firearms between both mongrel mob and Black Power, and that has, of course, raised real concerns with police and our community.
What kind of things are you talking about, Inspector?
Well, shooting at each other in homes. I mean, and at times there are children in these homes, and that's what's really concerning in this regard.
So what's driving the tension?
Well, they're opposing gangs, for one. We don't really know the exact exactly what's driving this issue, but we have spoken with gang leaders on a number of occasions to try and understand what this tit for tat is all about, why it's occurring, and why it needs to stop.
So you don't know if there's been a specific incident that sparked it, or whether it is just the mere fact they belong to opposing gangs?
Look, there was a shooting a short time ago involving a gang member, and that gang member presented at Gisborne Hospital the following morning, and as a result was treated for a gunshot wound to the abdomen, and of course thereafter a number of tit-for-tat incidents have occurred. But what I can say, blue on red, red on blue. Very clear.
And your initial thoughts that all these incidents are linked in some way?
Well, that's what we're trying, that's what our investigation is all about, is to determine whether they are as such linked. But what we know is someone's presented with a serious injury, and whether there's some form of retribution that has occurred in the following days, that appears to have been the case. Can we put our finger on it absolutely, positively, that they're all related? No, we can't. But that's why we're investigating.
The serious gunshot wound, is it your belief that that was inflicted by a rival gang member?
Yes.
Are people talking to you about what actually happened?
So this is the thing, is that actually we are out there speaking to, obviously, the person that was shot, the family of the person that was shot, people in and around the community of where that incident is believed to have occurred. We have a 0800 Crime Stoppers. We are talking to a number of people in the community leaders. So we're out there speaking to a whole lot of people. We want information to better help us get to the bottom of this all.
For Operation Atlas, how many officers have you got coming into the district that wouldn't normally be there?
Look, there's a number of officers. I mean, I won't get into the numbers. There are a number of police officers that are coming in across different areas of response, investigations and prevention, and are coming with different skill sets, and they are supporting the local police and the district police within Eastern. So, I won't get into the numbers in that regard.
Okay, so you say that those extra staff are going to work in the area of disruption and prevention activities. What are disruption activities?
Again, that's operational. I'd be telling you exactly what we're doing, and we're doing a number of activities that are in the community, with the community. Some of it will be focused directly around certain individuals. Some of it would be actually from a prevention perspective, being visible in a certain place at a certain time. Some of it will be doing face-to-face with people at their homes or in the community, like Matariki last Friday night. So it's a number of tactics that we deploy without getting into into the absolute detail a number of tactics that we deploy from a response, investigation and prevention perspective.
So what help do you need from the community then?
Wow, great question. Talk to us. Tell us what's going on. You know, I've previously been at Hui where I've been told, Sam, gang members to police are our whānau. We don't condone their behaviour, but they're whānau, they're family. So my thing is, that's fantastic. Yes, you're right. And how do we get through to our whānau family to do the right thing? And because of the harm and the potential harm that are being caused by these perpetrators, by these gang members, by these gang associates, and it's not all of them, it's some of them. So what can we do to find them and then hold them to account? Because if you're shooting guns at a house that have got children in it, the gloves are off. You know, I mean, that's taboo. That's the worst of the worst, really.
Inspector, are you telling people that these may be your family members, but you have a social responsibility to report their illegal activity?
I think there is a social responsibility on our community, on our whānau, to step up and say, actually, enough is enough. You know, we've got another generation of rangatahi coming through, coming into our schools, coming into our workplaces, and they're becoming a new generation of leaders. Is this what we've got ready for them? No, it isn't. There's a whole lot of amazing stuff going on in Wairoa. Let's connect up with the good stuff, and let's stand up and say, actually, no, whānau member, you need to be held to account.
It is 5:45. A major new environmental plan for the Hauraki Gulf is being cautiously supported on all sides. The government's announced protection zones which will prohibit fishing, as well as a severe restriction on bottom trawling for commercial operators. Our reporter Jordan Bond and cameraman Dom Thomas have the story.
A sea change for a major and contentious industry.
We're tripling the size of highly protected areas in the Gulf, which will allow not only fish stocks but all of the other seabirds and shellfish and other species to really reach higher numbers.
Acting Conservation Minister Aisha Verrill discussing the 18 new highly protected areas in the Hauraki Gulf. All up, there'll be nearly a fifth of the total area, about 200,000 hectares. In addition, the Fisheries Minister David Parker will put a stop to the majority of commercial bottom trawling, but will still allow some in specific channels.
This is the biggest control of bottom trawling that there is in any part of New Zealand, and we're doing that because of the problems that we've currently got in the Gulf, and the confident belief that this is going to make an enormous difference.
This is largely welcomed by Russell Norman of Greenpeace, in addition to last week's announcement of more cameras on commercial vessels.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you've seen with the new minister is that things have started to change. Obviously, the cameras on boats, getting the money for that was an important step forward. It's still not enough cameras, but it's an important start. The discard policy, ending dumping, is very important. What we've seen today with the Hauraki Gulf will also be very significant. So there's a series of steps that they're making. We still want to see more cameras rolled out more quickly. We really need to move on bottom trawling, which is immensely damaging.
Minister Parker says banning all bottom trawling would effectively end commercial fishing in the Gulf, which he doesn't want to do. For mana whenua, including Joe Davis from Ngāti Hei, there couldn't be a more vital, healthy ecosystem than the moana.
We treasure the taonga that Tongaro gives us, and we want to see, and it's up to us as humans, as the apex predators in this whole thing. We're responsible for Tongaro, otherwise Tongaro's going to take it off us, and that's we're talking about extinctions, and Wairoa lost, Maori lost, if we don't look after the children of Tongaro.
And with a near tripling of the size of marine protected areas, he says enforcement will be needed.
Stock is struggling now with compliance around marine reserves. So with this huge increase in MPAs, how are they going to comply? What sort of pressures are they going to put on themselves, as well as the public, as well as ourselves, in managing and looking after those MPAs?
The industry says it certainly has an interest in sustainable fishing. After all, no fish, no money. Peter Reedy, the chief executive of Sanford, says there are still details to be worked out, but he broadly supports the plan.
We're on board in terms of the Gulf being a precious place, and fishing resource and sustainability in the Gulf is really important to us as well as to everyone else who loves the area. So we're on board with doing that better and more effectively.
Mr Reedy says the government is listening and he's sure they'll get a workable plan.
Ensuring good protected areas and substantial size and protected areas is a good thing, and we are supportive of that. It's just the balancing act and understanding the impact of that and making sure we Sanford's, as I said, started in 1864, has been fishing in New Zealand waters since that time, and we want to do it, so that's over 150 years, and we want to do it for another 150 years, and a key to that is sustainable fishing. So we're enthusiastic about working that through.
The changes largely focus on commercial activities, but the size of marine protected areas where people are not allowed to fish at all will soon be 18% of the entire Gulf. The president of the Recreational Fishing Council, Keith Ingram, is worried the positioning of these will force amateur boaties out too far from the coast.
They don't own the flash recreational boats. These people have second-hand old boats and they fish the inner Gulf, and if they get pushed out into open water, we know that the Hauraki Gulf weather conditions can change in an hour.
Some of the measures in the plan can be implemented soon, and others, such as the specific catch limits, will be developed over the next 12 months. The new marine protection areas need legislation and will come into force not until 2024.
10 new COVID-19 cases have been found in Sydney, where officials are ramping up restrictions and warning that more positive cases are coming in the next few days. World Watch's Max Toll has more.
10 new cases, almost doubling what's been called the Bondi cluster to 21. Thankfully, though, for New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian, all but 2 of the 10 were already in isolation.
One family managed to contract the entire disease, a parent and 4 children. So just to demonstrate to you how contagious this is. So we anticipate in coming days that those in isolation with a household contact are likely to develop the disease given how contagious it is.
But there is still concern. One of the new cases is a child in the eastern suburbs. Their primary school will have to be shut down and cleaned. Gladys Berejiklian also announcing the extension of Sydney's mandatory mask rules for another week and to all of Greater Sydney. Masks have to be worn in any indoor venues and on public transport. What is worrying, she says, is how easily this Delta variant of the virus seems to be spreading.
We did expect, given how absolutely contagious the virus is, we did expect that household contacts that are already in isolation were likely to get the virus, because unfortunately a number of people who've contracted the virus have done so in a very fleeting way, literally being within less than a metre within somebody but sharing the same airspace without any physical contact has still meant the virus has managed to transfer.
She's referring to the virus having spread at Bondi Junction. Anyone who visited the shopping centre last week or even its car park should be on high alert. An infectious diseases expert, Lara Herrero, says even the briefest contact can cause transmission.
My understanding is that they were fairly close. It was just a passing moment, which means that the virus itself would have had to be lingering in the air for enough time for the secondary person to take an unfortunate breath in.
The Prime Minister has lent her support to the New Zealand Olympic Committee over its selection of Laurel Hubbard for the Olympics. The weightlifter is set to become the first transgender athlete in Games history. The selection has been a polarising one, putting Laurel Hubbard at the centre of the debate over the fairness of transgender athletes. Here's Clay Wilson.
New Zealand's weightlifting team for the Olympics wouldn't normally be the domain of a Prime Minister or media outlets on the other side of the world. But such is the level of attention around Laurel Hubbard's selection for the Tokyo Games, views and opinions have been coming from all corners since yesterday's announcement. Jacinda Ardern's take, everything is by the book.
That's the case for Laurel, but also the team in New Zealand. They have followed the rules. The alternative is to have someone who's followed the rules but then is denied the ability to participate. Ultimately, I leave it to those bodies, and that's the decision they've made, and it's in keeping with the standard that's been set globally.
But it's that very standard which some are criticising in the wake of Hubbard's selection. British media personality Piers Morgan even weighing in, saying that while he isn't blaming Hubbard, the uncomfortable truth is the decision is a disaster for women's sport. New Zealand's opposition leader isn't going that far. However, Nationals' Judith Collins says while she would hate to see Hubbard bullied or attacked, an honest conversation needs to be had.
This is clearly an issue that needs to be discussed in a reasoned and sensible way, because there is the issue of biological women being unable to actually compete because they're competing against transgender women who were born biologically male. And there is actually, unfortunately, that issue.
Another issue is the potential distraction for the 4 other New Zealand weightlifters selected, both now and at the Games themselves. Commonwealth Games champion David Leety says he's simply focusing on what he can control. Teammate Cameron McTaggart is of a similar opinion.
I'm just focusing on my own training and just doing everything that I can to focus on my performance. And at the end of the day, it's not a team sport, it's about the individual, so just focusing on myself, yeah.
The nature of weightlifting may also help with the likely attention on the team. McTaggart says the mental strength required to perform in the sport is something he's worked hard on with coach and 3-time Olympian Richie Patterson.
All eyes are on you, and if you're not comfortable or used to that situation, it is extremely overwhelming. So Richie's definitely given me the tools to help cope with those pressures, and it's really invaluable.
As for Leety, whatever comes, it'll be hard to wipe the smile off his face. Despite having no idea what to expect in Tokyo, he can't wait to hopefully add to his Commonwealth gold from 2018.
I like to be a person who would just flow with the flow, roll with the punches and stuff. And so with Commonwealth Games, I walked in and I've never been to a place like that. And for the Olympics to be a bigger event, I know for sure that when I walk in, I'll be more surprised to how it is, and I'm excited to see what it's like.
Leety and his 4 teammates have just a few more weeks to wait before they find out.
When the Taranaki Bulls run out for their first match of the Provincial Rugby Championship in August, there'll be one glaring omission on the team sheet. The man behind the Ferdinand the Bull mask is hanging up his horns after more than 20 years as the team's mascot. Our Taranaki Wanganui reporter Robin Martin caught up with the elusive bovine.
A piping designer by day, Morris West had a history as a sports mascot when he took on the Taranaki job in 1999. He'd already suited up for the region's basketball side before tackling the audition. Morris remembers being up against a couple of 20-somethings who hadn't accounted on the amateur thespians' enthusiasm.
I just went straight into crazy mode, whereas the other ones, people either tend to go into their shell when they're given the chance to be an idiot, or they go overboard. Unbelievably, I go overboard.
Morris also promised to travel to away matches in the North Island at his own expense.
I went to every game anyway, despite the fact my background's soccer. I'd still go to every game because I've always believed if you're going to watch something, watch it live. And I still believe that, just that for the last 20 years I haven't had a chance to watch a Taranaki game live.
Yes, that's right. The ability to see is not one of the 6-kilogram latex mask strong points, but it does have an upside.
On a cold winter's night, it's lovely and warm. It's beautiful. But yes, this thing that people say, oh, you lose weight doing it, you must lose a few kilos. Nah, it doesn't happen.
Morris has rubbed shoulders with numerous All Blacks, including the Barrett brothers, of course, and enjoyed 3 Ranfurly Shield reigns. But his favourite part of the Ferdy role has been interacting with the fans.
I think the biggest thing I take out of it is the memory of, watching kids' faces light up, especially when you draw the silly little picture on their hand or write the autograph for Ferdy. Also loved going out to the hospices in the hospital with Peter Burke. The first thing he did whenever he was asked to go out and do his jobs for looking after the shield was he'd ring me up and say, is Ferdy available to come with me?
Taranaki rugby boss and former professional Lawrence Corlett says Morris's contribution cannot be underestimated.
I remember him as a player, always there on the sidelines, running around, really engaged with the children, always going up and talking to them, making sure they feel part of the whole experience of watching and supporting Taranaki rugby. And he's been a great servant for the game. Someone who's been to 120 odd games, I think it is. Yeah, 132 games. A lot of rugby to watch and be involved with, and we've been very lucky to have him.
He reckons he leaves big shoes to fill.
Pretty irreplaceable, really, Morris. So it's not going to be an easy task to do, but I'm sure there'll be someone out there that will be really keen and excited to be involved with Ferdy.
In New Plymouth, people only had good things to say about Ferdy.
Oh, it's been exceptional. It's part of Taranaki rugby.
Oh, yeah, he's been marvellous, hasn't he?
He's pretty well known. Raw, golfing.
See the Ferdinand run around with a thing like that. It's all great, been great, yeah.
Oh, he's done pretty well, you know, he's got a good bit of fun for the kids.
Well, I didn't know there was a person in it. I just thought it was remote control.
Not that there were many takers for the job.
Do you wear a costume? Oh, yeah, I could do that. The glamour.
I'm too old and unfit.
Well, I'm only working part-time, so maybe I can fill in the rugby boots and do a great job.
No, I'm a bit too old for it.
Probably not. I do need a job, but I'm not sure about that one.
I'm retired, I'm nearly 80, so it might be a fit younger bugger for me.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, you remain anonymous at all times, don't you?
Now Morris, who turns 65 on the same day the new season kicks off, admits he's tried to hang up the horns before, but he insists this time it's for real.
Oh, wow. Keep your eye on the situations vacant there. On the subject of mental health, some of you getting in touch about this. This person says our DHB has a new mental health unit. They built the unit with fewer beds than previously. As a nurse in an acute ward, I can tell you we regularly have mental health overflow patients in our ward, often with a mattress only on the floor and with one-on-one 24-hour watch requirements. It is shameful and inappropriate. Martin has got in touch to say my daughter was assigned to Auckland's acute mental health team 6 weeks ago and was told to expect a call within a week. No one has ever called back. Tobias says it took 3 weeks until he got his wife care with a psychiatrist, had to take her to acute services to get the ball rolling faster under the advice from her GP. No wonder Mike King passed his award back.
RNZ News at 6. Ngā mihi nui ko Susana Leata with DNA. Whānau are being urged to report whoever is behind a spree of gang-related shootings in Wairoa, with police saying a line's been crossed and children put in serious danger. Extra officers have been brought into the district as part of Operations Atlas that's targeting the Black Power and mongrel mob gangs in the wake of growing tensions and ongoing violence. But Tairawhiti Area Commander Inspector Sam Aberahama has told Checkpoint he wants help and information from the local community.
If you're shooting guns at a house that have got children in it, the gloves are off. There is a social responsibility on our community, on our whānau, to step up and say, actually, enough is enough.
Inspector Aberahama won't say exactly how many extra police have been brought into the town. The Health Minister's flagging a review of the rollout of the record $1.9 billion investment in mental health, citing concerns it's not happening quickly enough. The money was allocated in 2019, but 2 years on, it's unclear how much progress has been made on building new mental health rooms and facilities. The most recent figures show just over $500,000 of the $235 million tagged for capital has been spent. Andrew Little says he's concerned enough to be considering an official review. The Independent Police Conduct Authority is considering reopening its inquiry into the fatal police shooting of a Rotorua man. 35-year-old Shargin Stephens was shot after attacking a police car with a weed slasher. An RNZ investigation reveals multiple inconsistencies between the IPCA report and findings from the police investigation into the 2016 death. The IPCA said officers at the incident were unaware of Mr. Stephens' identity until after the shooting. But in the police homicide investigation, an officer said he recognised Stephens as soon as he confronted him because he was a known criminal and he had tracked him many times. The IPCA will announce next week whether it will reopen its investigation. The police in South Auckland are helping people to return to their homes after the weekend's powerful tornado left around 20 properties in Papatoetoe uninhabitable. The Auckland Council's General Manager for Building Consents, Ian McCormick, says 260 buildings have been assessed so far. Another 51 properties are deemed safety hazards and 119 have minor damage. Mr McCormick says repairs are underway.
There's a very large number of contractors working closely with the owners and occupants, getting those homes repaired and, I said cleaning up the mess from what has been a really shocking display of the power of the weather.
Auckland Emergency Management says 67 people are staying in emergency accommodation. There are calls for the government to overhaul the Accident Compensation Corporation following new analysis showing the ACC law is biased against disabled people. A series of previous reports indicate the scheme disadvantages women, Māori and Pasifika. Auckland University economics professor Susan St John says it is time for major changes.
ACC has really become riddled with so many anomalies and unfairnesses that it really does need to have an overhaul.
Susan St John says it's been more than 50 years since the ACC scheme was established. Iwi are relieved about the government's plan to restore the state of the Hauraki Gulf. Under the new Revitalising the Gulf strategy, trawl fishing is to be limited and the area of marine sanctuary tripled. Te Aorewa Rolleston reports.
For nearly 10 years, representatives from iwi have pushed to see the health and mauri of the Gulf restored. This comes after growing concerns around depleted fish stocks, biodiversity, pollution and degraded marine habitats. Paul Majuri from Pari Hauraki says the government drawing a line in the sand is a good starting point. The Minister for Oceans and Fisheries, David Parker, says the government was ready to take long-term action to protect the Gulf.
Some people with epilepsy will have to switch to a drug not yet approved in New Zealand after the existing supplier pulled out. The change means about 800 people will have to use a different brand of the drug Primodone from October. Health correspondent Rowan Quinn reports.
Pharmac says it's essential people keep taking their medicine and it's better to have an unapproved brand than none at all. The new company, Tiva, will apply to MedSafe, but in the meantime it can be used here under a special clause in the law. Small changes in epilepsy medication can have an impact. An earlier switch of a different medication sparked a coroner's investigation after 6 deaths. The coroner did not find a direct link to the change, but said it may have been a background factor in 2 of the deaths.
It's 6:05. Despite 2 days having been completely washed out, Black Caps batting coach Luke Ronchi is confident an outright result at the World Test Championship in Southampton is still on the cards. New Zealand will resume at 101 for 2 tonight in reply to India's first innings of 217. The weather forecast is good for the next 2 days, and Ronchi says neither team will be thinking of a draw.
There's still a whole lot of Test cricket. It's 98 overs a day. It's a lot of time in a game to get a result, and if both teams go out and play their best, then it's going to be really interesting. It's exciting for both teams, and we're sort of certainly going into it full of confidence.
Dame Valerie Adams' gold medal hopes at the Tokyo Olympics have improved, with defending champion American Michelle Carter withdrawing from next month's games. Carter, who pipped Adams for gold at the Rio Olympics, has had surgery on her ankle. Adams, a 2-time Olympic champion, will be at her 5th Olympics. New All Blacks prop Ethan de Groot says his selection shows players from outside the main cities can still get to the top. Australian-born but raised in Gore, the 22-year-old Highlanders prop is one of 4 New All Blacks named in the squad to play Tonga and Fiji.
I would like to think I have inspired parents and kids to stay in Southland and do their schooling in Southland. There is a pathway. It is tough, and you're not in the limelight, but yeah, it can be done.
Meanwhile, Blues first 5 Otere Black has confirmed he's off to Japan on a 2-year deal after the domestic provincial competition. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, Tony Stamp samples the latest album from Bonnie, Prince, Billy. Auckland University Professor Frank Bloomfield raises the bar on the care of premature babies. Trevor Reekie explores the musical world of Nick Drake after the news at 11. And just what's happening to our snowfall. But more importantly, what's left to turn into glacial ice at the end of the summer thaw. It's all on Nights with me, Brian Crump. Still the right time for RNZ National.
Now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight tomorrow. Northland to Taumaranui, also Coromandel, Bay of Plenty and Taupo, fine weather. Taranaki to Horowhenua, Kapiti Coast, including Taihape. Partly cloudy, isolated showers clearing tomorrow. Gisborne to Wairarapa, also Wellington, a few showers clearing tomorrow. Marlborough, excluding Kaikoura Coast and the west from Nelson to Fiordland, mostly fine. Cloud and showers about and south of Bulla from tomorrow afternoon. Canterbury and Kaikoura Coast, cloudy periods and a few showers about the plains and Kaikoura Coast, clearing tomorrow. Fine inland, but low cloud at times about the Mackenzie Basin. Central Otago and southern lakes, fine apart from areas of low cloud or fog. North Otago to Southland, cloudy periods and a few showers, clearing to fine tomorrow morning. High cloud from tomorrow afternoon. Chatham Island showers, clearing tomorrow morning. RNZ National, it's 8 minutes past 6.
Thanks, Susanna. No mai hoki mai. This is Checkpoint. Ko Lisa Owen tēnei. Pressure is mounting on the government to overhaul ACC following further revelations. The scheme also discriminates against the disabled as well as women, Māori and Pasifika. Critics say it's time for the scheme to undergo radical change. Anusha Bradley reports.
In a briefing paper to its minister, ACC admits people who are left disabled by injury are treated far better and paid more compensation than those who are born disabled or have become so through illness. It also finds the disabled are much less likely to get wage compensation from ACC in the first place because they're far less likely to be in paid work. A disability researcher, Sasha Dillon, says the paper highlights the problems the sector's been trying to change for years, especially the inconsistencies in the way different government agencies treat people with disabilities, and it's time for change.
Someone can be lying in a hospital ward with, say, cancer on their spine that's given them an equivalent impairment to somebody who is in the next bed who's hurt themselves playing rugby or something. One of them will get a lot more help from the government than the other.
Yesterday, RNZ revealed further ACC analysis finds the scheme is also biased against women, Māori and Pasifika, with those groups less likely to file a claim, less likely to have it accepted and receive less compensation than other groups. Auckland University economics professor Susan St John says the ACC scheme needs a radical overhaul.
ACC has really become riddled with so many anomalies and unfairnesses that it really does need to have an overhaul. 50 years or more after it was first conceived by Sir Owen Woodhouse, we haven't had that major review and asking the question, is it still performing well?
The ACC Minister and Social Development Minister, Carmel Sepuloni, doesn't think an overhaul is necessary, but she's keen to make some changes.
What we want to do is make sure it works for all New Zealanders, and some of the statistics that came back that the media have now seen that I commissioned shows that actually there are some differences with regards to how groups benefit from the system. And so I don't know if that requires an overhaul or let's just get in there and make some changes.
It's unclear what those changes are, with the Minister saying she's asked for more information about why the inequalities are occurring. She says she's also waiting for the health and disability review that's underway to be complete. Long-time Māori health advocate Lady Tureti Moxon says a whole new Māori-focused system would make a difference. But the Minister says that's not on the cards.
That's not a consideration that we have. I just want to make sure that we want to make sure that the ACC system is working for all New Zealanders.
National's ACC spokesperson Simon Watts agrees splitting up ACC is not the way to reduce inequalities for Māori.
We, from my position, believe the solution to these problems is for ACC to work on its processes and see what's fit for purpose. But again, splitting up ACC into separate areas is not the way to go about it.
The Associate Minister of ACC, Willie Jackson, says it's clear Māori feel let down by ACC, but he says changes have been made that he hopes will make a difference.
Extra security has been put in place to prevent looting of homes damaged by the powerful tornado that tore through South Auckland on the weekend. 67 people are still out of their homes as the clean-up of Papatoetoe continues. Chen Liu reports.
South Auckland GP Dr. Api Tarimaitonga was shocked when he saw a window, wall and ceiling of his Cavendish Doctors Clinic being torn apart. The clinic's been forced to close and repair work is ongoing. Dr. Tarimaitonga says people are exhausted, especially after COVID-19 lockdowns earlier this year.
We've been really clear with our staff to take time out and look after themselves and in constant contact with them, but it's the patients that we haven't seen that I worry about.
Auckland Council's General Manager for Building Consents, Ian McCormack, says 260 buildings have been assessed and more are underway. He says about 20 properties are deemed uninhabitable, 51 have safety hazards but can be partially entered, and 119 have minor damage. Mr. McCormack says compliance officers will work with affected owners to help them return home.
There's a very large number of contractors working closely with the owners and occupants, getting those homes repaired and, I suppose cleaning up the mess from what has been a really shocking display of the power of the weather.
According to Duty Controller at Auckland Emergency Management, Fleur Eldridge, 67 people are staying in emergency accommodation, up from 60 last night. She says the clean-up continues with a focus on waste removal and trees and debris tidy up.
We're asking residents, subject to safety conditions, if they can remove their trees from their properties and put them out on the berm, and the Auckland Council Waste Management the contractors will come and pick up those trees for removal.
She says people can visit the Civil Defence Welfare Hub at an Ellen Brewster Leisure Centre for help. And Emergency Management are working with the Ministry of Social Development, Red Cross and the Salvation Army to offer ongoing assistance.
That support has been provided, and there's a mixture of support. We're providing financial assistance, insurance advice, advice on where to stay.
A Red Cross volunteer at the help centre, Jonathan Pauls, says less people are visiting today compared to yesterday. He says many visitors required accommodation assistance, but people seem positive.
They seem in good spirit on the whole. Obviously, not 100% happy with what's happened, but seem to be doing well and bearing up under the circumstances.
Extra security patrols are in place in Papatoetoe to provide reassurance to residents concerned their properties are at risk of being looted. Police say they are aware of locals' concerns and are working to ensure the safety of the area. They have not had any reports of burglary or theft, but encourage people to look out for each other. More than $80,000 has been donated to the family of Janish Prasad, the mechanic killed during a storm at the Ports of Auckland freight container hub in Wairoa.
It is 6:15 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. There's hope a new vaccination clinic in Dunedin will encourage people from vulnerable communities to get vaccinated. Just over 68,000 doses have been given in the southern district so far, with 13% of eligible Māori and Pasifika vaccinated to date. Otago Southland reporter Tess Brunton was at the official opening this morning and filed this report.
The Motato Tapuna Vaccination Clinic opened with song on a brisk morning in the Dunedin suburb of Caversham. Otako Health worked with the Southern DHB to make the clinic happen. Its chair, Donna Matahaera Atariki, explains the name of the clinic. Motato Tapuna means for our ancestors.
Battle-weary people went all the way up to Canterbury to help out whānau up there. They were successful, they made their way back to Otago, and one guy came off a boat and just about destroyed the whole village with the flu.
She wants to ensure vulnerable communities feel comfortable to get vaccinated.
We have lots of evidence that Māori and Pacific and other vulnerable groups have low trust in our health system. So we've actually got to be able to lean out to them, not just set up and go, haere mai, come here. We've actually got to keep constantly thinking about ways about how we reach them lean into them and bring them in.
Otago Health Principal Iwi Advisor Matt Matahayare led a whakawhatea to cleanse the clinic before it officially opened its doors.
Whano, harama te toki, haumi e, hui e.
He says work started on transforming the former medical centre into a whānau-friendly vaccination clinic on Thursday.
Long nights for a lot of people, so I'm looking around the room at our wonderful, amazing community and looking at how people can really come together for a kaupapa, such as this vaccine rollout, which really is about looking after our health. So long hours for a lot of people, probably on 2-3 hours sleep for the last couple of nights, and just coming together as a community so we can stand this up.
The clinic can deliver 100 vaccines a day and will have kai available. Waitomo Papakaanga, Kaiarahi, Katie Murray, was the first person to be vaccinated.
It was wonderful. There was no pain, by the way, people. It was smooth. 2 seconds gone and tape put on and 20 minutes to wait to make sure that there are no after effects. How lovely. It's a lovely atmosphere. You can yarn, have a cup of tea. It's warm, warmer than outside.
She's delighted to see the clinic up and running.
Leadership has to be taken by people, by organisations to create places like this that people are going to feel comfortable coming to in a small community, and it does. It builds a community spirit.
Manapuri resident Klaske Murrell was in Dunedin and managed to book one of the first appointments to get her second injection.
We were just so lucky that they fitted me in here so that I could get my second and be assured, because I've got to travel in a couple of weeks' time. So really marvellous.
The Southern DHB says it's pleased with the response to the clinic so far, with more expected to open before September. It's confident many in the Māori and Pacifica communities will get a vaccine. Motato Te Puna will be open for a drop-in clinic on Thursday, Saturday and Sunday from next week.
Ruapehu District Council is plugging a giant water leak with $20,000. Every day in the township of Ohakuni, hundreds of thousands of litres of water is wasted through various unidentified leaks and dodgy pipes. So it's offering up $200 to 100 households for plumbing work in a bid to stem the flow. Ruapehu District Mayor Don Cameron explains just how much water is going down the gurgler.
Anywhere between 25,000 to 38,000 litres per hour. A typical night being around about 30,000 litres, or on a daily, that's 720,000 litres per day, and it's equal to our Cooney swimming pool emptying out 2.5 times every day. So it is quite significant for a population of usual population of around 1,200 people.
Hang about, that's huge amounts. Huge amounts.
Absolutely, and look, we are well aware that there have been a lot of leaks in and around Ohakuni as it's been expanding, and we have tackled them in the past, but this time we really want to really get stuck in and try and cure it for once and for all, because Ohakuni is a growing town and we're hoping to do a housing project here.
In terms of where the water is escaping from, I mean, is it leaks in the pipes, or is it people who've got dripping taps, or what do you reckon it is?
Look, I think it's all of those, Lisa. Dripping taps, probably toilets overflowing or continually flowing, loose joints, because we do have a lot of frost here and quite heavy frosts, and it's not unusual in the past where we've had probably 100 homes have their pipes burst or leak badly. And we have a lot of homes here, roughly 50% of the homes in Ohakuni owned by people outside the district. And they're probably not even aware there is a leak without someone contacting them straight away. So, look, it is a matter of actually going house to house at the moment, ensuring that there are leaks that we can repair. And, look, we are expecting quite a big uptake of the offer of a $200 plumber repair job.
So Don, explain this to me. You've got 20 grand in the kitty. What's it for, and who can get their hands on it?
It's for any householder or any landowner, including the small little farmlets that are connected to the water supply, that may have even leaking troughs that they're not aware of. But we're asking people to go and check everything, and then if they require help from a plumber, up to the value of $200, we're more than happy to help them out. And that includes going under their houses and looking at joints, etc.
So they can get a $200 refund from the council if they do some repairs around plumbing, something that would stop a leak or water wastage.
Or either that, or we can send a plumber. If they contact us, a plumber will go around and will send us the bill and not them the bill, so they don't have to pay anything up front.
What do you get for $200 when it comes to plumbing services, though, Don? What would that get you? A widget?
We should get at least 3 hours of service from that. And to be honest, for a dripping tap or even a leaking toilet, that's less than half an hour to fix. Most of us have got the skills to do that ourselves, but a lot of people would not have a clue where to even start. So we're more than happy to make sure that someone goes around as soon as we hear of the problem and fix it for them.
So is it first in, first served?
It will be, absolutely.
And how quickly are you expecting to tune through that then?
Look, probably it will take a little while because there's no snow at Turoa at the moment, even though we are experiencing quite large numbers visiting every weekend. But we want to get this fixed before the ski season, where the town goes from 1,100 people to up to 15,000 people.
And that was the Ruapehu District Mayor Don Cameron. Unlicensed cheap ride shares operating via social media are a risky business, Waka Kotahi is warning. It says most drivers have not passed the police vetting process for a fit and proper operator and don't have a licence to operate. And that means there's no guarantee the vehicle is safe. Waka Kotahi's Calvin Lloyd says groups like the Dunedin Sober Drivers Facebook page are pretty popular and cheap, but there's a potential danger.
There's always an inherent risk there, and it's really a concern that both the police and us share around the potential for something to happen where we don't really have the same sort of avenues to follow up with a driver that we do with licensed operators, and that's the big concern.
So what's the problem with getting in a car with someone who doesn't have a small passenger service licence? What are the potential issues there?
So probably the big thing is with a licensed operator, someone that has a passenger endorsement, they are police vetted before they're issued with the endorsement. So there's quite for anyone that's been through that, they will know there's actually it's scrutinised a lot. Their driving history, criminal history. Person that gets a passenger endorsement has to jump through quite a few hoops to get that endorsement. The second thing is, of course, is the vehicles and the standards that a licensed operator has to comply with to make sure that their vehicles are fit and have some of the specific pieces of equipment in their vehicles, like cameras, signage, and for an unlicensed operator, none of that equipment will be found in their vehicles.
Are you concerned that there may be predatory people operating these services and then there's no way of tracking them down?
And that's, again, Lisa, it comes back to the risk because it's completely unregulated, we just don't know. And if the regulator and police don't know, the people that are getting into those vehicles don't know either. And it's, like the recipe for potential disaster there, and for something to go wrong, is pretty high. So I think, really what we're trying to do is just make people aware that on the face of it, this may be an attractive option to get home, but there are some really big risks in getting into a vehicle where you just don't know who that person is that you're driving with.
Can you name names here? Which services are you talking about that people should be careful of?
There's anything that's any passenger or any sort of service that's operating a passenger service where it's not through a recognised app or it's not through a recognised taxi service. A lot of the things that we're looking at here are generally through social media sites, the likes of Facebook. And we know that there's various sites across the country. The one that we're looking at down here is obviously the Dunedin one. But I'm sure that it's not to one social media site alone. It'll be others, but our message is a general one. If You're looking at transport to get to or from town, especially at night. Use those recognised licensed services because they're there for a reason.
I'm picking that people would go to this kind of service in Dunedin, student town, because it's cheap, right?
Yep.
So if they are going to use it, what advice are you giving to them about what checks they can do?
Probably, and that's a really good point, and we absolutely recognise that, that it is a cheaper service, but are the risks of saving a few dollars worth the risk of something going wrong down the track when you're in that vehicle? And that's, for me, actually, the cheap service really doesn't. I'd rather pay a bit extra and know that I'm getting into a vehicle that's got a properly licensed driver that's going to get me home safely in a safe vehicle.
To Japan now, where the decision to allow up to 10,000 spectators at Olympic venues has not gone down well. Just days ago, the country's top health experts were warning that keeping fans away was the safest option. The ABC's Jake Sturmer has more.
The Olympics and Paralympics won't be crammed with screaming fans. But for Olympic organisers and athletes, at least it won't be like the test events held without spectators.
Try to Fiji, sport by.
Empty stadiums with little atmosphere and the sound of only competitors and announcers echoing throughout. Olympic officials will allow spectators to fill half a venue with a cap of 10,000. Ticket sales are the equal second biggest source of revenue for Olympic organisers after local sponsorships. Last week, the government's top coronavirus advisor and 25 other health experts said the most desirable option is for athletes to compete without an audience because of the fear that the increased movement in and out of venues could lead to clusters and spreading the virus throughout the country. The organising committee's president, Seiko Hashimoto, speaking here through a translator, insists it can be done safely, pointing to other major events that have been successfully held.
There are so many cases domestically and also internationally, the sports events held with spectators, and we do have good evidence. So by exercising a thorough measures based on the government criteria, we believe that we can hold games with spectators.
A poll by Japan's Kyodo news agency over the weekend found 86% of people were concerned about a resurgence in COVID-19 cases if the games are held. Around 40% believe the summer games should be held without spectators, and 30% think they should be cancelled.
Well, we're almost out of time. Just a reminder, First Up will be with you from 5 o'clock tomorrow morning, speaking with a New Zealander living in Fiji about the government's inaction as active cases of COVID-19 swell to more than 1,500. Do tune in for that. Kei te hoki mai anō popo whānau po Mārie.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. The Health Minister Andrew Little is considering launching an official review into the slow rollout of $1.9 billion funding for mental health. Pressure is mounting on the government to overhaul ACC. With further revelations, the scheme discriminates against the disabled, women, Māori and Pasifika. The Cook Islands is dismissing claims the businessman Mike Pero cancelled plans for a new airline due to a lack of government support. Around 12